Hi, my name's Kathy Millett and welcome to my Starting Scenery course. Quick 5-minute videos on how to do the basics. This week, what goes under your scenery?
Good scenery needs a good base, and here are 4 methods I use to build up the contours of my scenery before I get to the earth and ground layer next. I built a really quick test diorama to show you all of these, split into 4 sections. It's just foam core glued together with hot glue. First up is a cardboard lattice that acts as a base for your scenery. You need cardboard strips, funnily enough, and I just get those from all those cardboard boxes that come through my front door, and I cut them into sort of 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch strips. Now the cardboard needs to sit on some kind of contour profiles at each of the ends that you glue. So I just used foam board, drew a nice shape for the contour. This is just a technique, so it's not really based on anything, and then glued it in place with hot glue. I find a contour every foot or so works best. And then it's on to putting the lattice in place. Now you need to bend your cardboard as it would be straight otherwise, and then it's as simple as trimming it to size and gluing it in place with yet more hot glue. You'll need to hold it for a little bit just to make sure that it's set, but it doesn't take long, and this is a really quick method for building up vast amounts of scenery. Continue adding strips every 3 or 4 inches apart, and when they're all done you can add some horizontal strips to give it more rigidity. These are woven in and out of the vertical strips and glued in place on each strip with a smidgen of hot glue. It adds quite a lot of structure, and this is a very quick and cheap method to build up huge amounts of open scenery. Next, crumpled paper. This is one of my personal favourites because it's cheap and easy for filling vast areas of scenery. I use crumpled paper from online deliveries. You can use anything that you have. If you're worried about humidity in your paper sitting there, then consider foil or bubble wrap or something like that. The top ones on a vertical surface like this may need a bit of hot glue. If it's just a horizontal hill you're building up, you probably won't need it. My favourite is foam though, and I normally use it structurally. Now there's 2 types of foam. Those that will carve with a hot knife, which is a heated blade, you can get them anywhere online and there'll be hot wire tools, or those that will carve with a kitchen knife. This is Celotex, and I recommend you take the aluminium off the outside because it makes it A, easier to carve, and B, you won't get any unexpected shorts later on if you put your track against the scenery by mistake. Finally, foam core or plywood. Sometimes scenery just isn't that exciting. It's not that bumpy, it is quite flat, especially under buildings, in which case I just filled the gaps here with cardboard so I didn't use too much of the final surfacing product. But realistically, you don't need to do much more than a plain sheet. Still looks like we're missing something. Yep, a top layer. All of these realistically need another layer to give the fine contours or a little bit more structure. I like 2, plaster cloth and sculptor mould. So first up, plaster cloth. I tend to drape it on dry because I find it less messy, and then spray it with water when it's in situ. I find the plaster cloth stays a little bit more stiff that way and doesn't fall down into the gaps, leaving the underlying texture a little bit too obvious, because let's face it, it's either a mesh or crumpled paper. The plus points of plaster cloth is that it's very easy to cover large sections, it's lightweight, and you can punch through it very easily if you want to plant trees. The downside are I don't put enough layers on to get rid of those little holes, so for the next layer I normally start with quite a thick amount of glue just to fill the holes in, and I put a layer of something like tile grout on. It can sometimes fall through though if you're not careful. Overall, it's my favourite method for things like my home layout, which isn't getting moved a lot, it doesn't really need to have a huge amount of robustness, and this is much cheaper than the next method. So on to the second method I'm going to show you, sculptor mould. Now this is a plaster and paper mache mix. It's a very lightweight plaster product. It sets up on its own when you add water to it. You can mix it in a variety of consistencies from very gloopy to very thick, just depending what you want to do. It will smooth out to almost flat if you work it a lot as it dries, or it can stay quite lumpy if you want a bit of texture to your ground. It's a beautiful product, very lightweight when it's dried and very robust. You can add a smidgen of paint if you don't want it to be white in case you're worried of knocks. Downside, and the only one really for me, it's price. I wouldn't use it for my whole layout at home, it's just too expensive, but for a diorama it would always be my first choice.
Any questions, put them in the comments below. Thank you to my Patreons. See you next time. If you want to know more, check out my website.